Welcome to The Space Between. On this episode, I am joined by Christina Walker. Christina is a nurse of over 30 years and has been on a transformative spiritual journey since the age of 19. Together, we discuss self-love, which is the foundation of our being and what brings us to our purpose in this life. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome, everyone, to the Space Between podcast. I'm Alyson Rixner, and I am very delighted to have a very dear friend with me today, Christina Walker. Christina, welcome to the Space Between.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, thank you for being here. And so happy that we get to do two of these. I snagged you for two while I had you. So thank you so much. So before we get into the quick kind of overview of the space between and the intention, you and I have known each other for many, many years. I met you when I was 15 and going through some really interesting family stuff and, you know, some traumatic situations. And you have been such a guide and a light and a sense of support for me. And I can't thank you enough. And now I get to call you a friend. So
yes.
I know. It makes me feel so full. And again, I'm just so glad. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You wear many hats.
Yes.
You do. And you've had quite an amazing story, which we'll get into. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 43 years. And been on a healing path, basically, since I was 19. I was in a car accident where I experienced a near-death experience, which we talked about in the energy segment. So
yes, check out the energy episode.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So I don't repeat myself for the listeners. And then it took me on a journey of a path to learn to heal myself, love myself, understand the world, basically, really.
Yeah.
And myself in the world.
Right. And self-love is our theme today, guys.
Yes.
It's a big one.
It is.
It's a really, really big one. And being a student of finding and continuing to search for that love for self. Would you say that's part of your credentials?
I'm still a work in progress.
We all are.
You are continuing this journey. The whole idea is to, so we're energy. And when you die, energy can never be destroyed, which I talked about in the last segment. But when you die, you do take that energetic self with you. Because I know the state of consciousness I was in when I had the car accident. I was in a state of anger. I was 19 and I had a lot of anger at that time. And I thank God I got to come back to change that, because now I'm on the path of learning to switch from anger to love, because that's really the consciousness I'd like to bring into wherever I go next, because energy can never be destroyed. I'm on that path is learning to love yourself. And when you've dealt with anger and guilt from surviving a car accident where people have passed away while they were in the car, and you know what you're like when you're 19, that just shakes up your world. And what is the purpose?
19's hard enough.
I know.
You're not loving yourself at 19. I mean, if you are, bravo.
Yes.
Bravo. Maybe the new generation is.
Yeah. I mean, you're still learning about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at 19, your physical brain is still forming. So that also too had a big impact of my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So, in the space between, we talk about this interesting time. And I think self-love is such an important topic because like I've discussed on the previous episodes, we have gone through a portal. We can't go back. We are different. How we see the world is different. And we're in this really interesting transitory time where we're searching. Everyone is searching, right? What is that thing? What is the next thing? You know, we know there's something better ahead because this better not be it. Let's be clear. But we're still in this interesting mode. And the definition of self-love, I had to chuckle when I looked it up from the Oxford Dictionary, is definitely not what we're going to talk about today. So the narrative of self-love is very different. It's a regard for one's own well-being or happiness considered as a natural and appropriate attitude towards oneself. Now, if that isn't like the most textbook thing, there's zero feeling, there's no love in that sentence. I certainly didn't feel it. You know, I think for my path, and we'll get into more of you know, kind of where you've come with the self-love journey. I believe that it's never over. We always can find deeper love for ourselves. And I remember, especially growing up, you know, there's a lot of women, I'm sure, that will be listening to this. You're kind of taught to not like yourself. You have to look a certain way. You have to be a certain way. And I think just living in the collective energy, which we talk about, that collective unconscious, there's a lot of things that pull you from loving yourself. It's almost like you get thrown into the fire and then you have to walk backwards out of it and try to find your way. You, of course, had, you know, the very tragic incident that happened at 19. 19 is such a formative time. I remember at 19 feeling horrible about my body. And what I wouldn't give to look like that right now. Just kidding. Sort of. But even just being in your body, right? At that age, and when you're younger and, you know, nobody can really explain to you, you have hormones going on and you just don't feel, there's no grounding into yourself, right? And I think the narratives of self-love is like, very wax optimism, like, oh, you should just love yourself, when everything on the collective unconscious is telling you not to. You're like, wait, how am I supposed to do that? You know, there's a lot of songs about it. There's a lot of people that have made art about it.
Yes.
You know, there's relationships that we have with each other, right? We're so focused externally.
Yes.
You know, you have to love your parents. You have to love your this person, that, right? And it's all pulling you away from the self. So I think that's kind of, you know, where the narrative has sat historically with self-love. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people really talking about how to find that for yourself.
Yeah, it's an experience. It's an experience. You know, you have to feel it. It's an experiential feeling. It's not a thought.
No,
it's not out there. It's inside, and it's a true deep dive.
Yeah,
learning to love yourself. And I have to tell the audience that I am still on that journey. I haven't quite figured that one out totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I will when the day I die. But as of right now, to create a life that is loving and having purpose and meaning in my life and passion, to me, love is passion. And so when I say self-love, I don't think about, oh, I love myself. No, it's more of what is my passion? What about me gives out this love to everybody? You know, I had a friend that told me that people don't remember what you say. They walk away remembering how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Again.
Yeah. It's all in the heart. Yeah. And opening your heart to yourself, to receive, to understand. But again, it's a long journey.
It is. I think that's right, though. I mean, maybe when you're ready to transition, that's when you're like, oh,
exactly.
Bing, right? I don't know. But I think it is, again, because of the collective, we are pulled from ourselves every day. I mean, I find myself having to come back to, it's what I call home. You know, we're always looking for peace and safety and all of these things. And ultimately, It's just, you have to have that love for yourself. And so much mental illness and depression, right? That's a dissociation from love of yourself. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was kind of the shadow side of self-love. I know that when I began the journey of coming home to me, all hell broke loose for me, quite frankly. Life became more difficult, and I was faced with the parts of myself that I didn't want to see. The icky. I call it the ick, right? The things that you're just like, oh, that's not me. And you're making excuses and playing victim. And then all of a sudden you go on this self-love journey and you're like, oh, wait, I have to stare at these parts of myself in the face. It's really hard.
To totally accept yourself.
Yeah.
Both the positive and the negative of yourself. Yes. And what I'm learning is, okay, yeah, I do have negative thoughts and negative feelings, but the minute I become aware of it, I switch it up. I'm like, okay, I need to change that thought and that feeling because, again, we're all vibration. We put out what we think, we put out what we feel. And to take full accountability and responsibility for myself and how I interact with you or with someone else and the world is a constant awareness. So could self-love just be self-awareness and how you...
Yeah, totally. It's certainly part of it.
Yeah, and how you interact with
yourself and anything around you, the things in your life, the people in your life, the situations that arise.
Yes, but the one thing that your definition did bring up was regard.
True.
And I believe that self-love is a form of regard.
Yeah.
And if you stand in and have the intention of regard, you probably would think twice about what you do to someone else. And...
or even to yourself.
And to yourself, yes.
Because we're tougher on ourselves than probably we are with other people. That's true for me.
Yes. I think
I'm very self-critical. I have a Virgo moon, if anybody knows what that means. Now I'm supposed to love my whole chart. Self-love, love. And we are tougher on ourselves and breaking through. So not only do we have the narratives of the collective, we have what goes on here. Because it's not what goes on here. This is pure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The heart is pure. The heart knows.
The heart always knows. So one of the things that you and I were talking about before when we started talking about self-love is this amazing journey that you've been on with Dr. Joe Dispenza's program. And he's amazing. And we'll put it in the show notes and all of the work that he's doing to scientifically bring our physical and energetic worlds together, which... it's about damn time. So we're happy about that. So talk to me a little bit about some of the experiences that you had there around self-love and some of the things you've witnessed, because I think it's just really interesting.
Yes. I was, there's people that come to the seminar that have like ALS, very debilitating diseases. And every time I ask them, the one thing they always tell me is that they had a lot of self-hate.
Yeah.
And that they're on the journey to learn to love themselves. And I sat back and went, oh, yeah, I'm a chronic pain patient too. And how is it that I think about myself? How is it that I feel about myself? Am I in that state of loving myself? It is so easy for me to love everybody and everything outside of myself.
Codependent party of one.
Yes.
Recovering codependent party of one. But yeah, and that's another thing because if you're outwardly, you don't have to think about what's happening in here.
Exactly.
You get to focus outwardly. And that's when I got really sick.
Yes.
When I was living my life for everybody else and I was so disconnected from my heart. And my love that I have for myself, that, again, lifelong journey, right? And that's very interesting. So the self-hate, the critic, what we will call the ego mind, right? That's constantly running and telling us a bunch of bullshit that's not true, because it is BS. You get stuck in that. It's hard to get out of that.
Yeah, and when we're children, we absorb a lot of our family environment, consciousness, and intention, and it gets put in your cells. And if you weren't brought up to be in that state of consciousness, then it's like, you need to find it and figure it out.
Yeah. And most people were not. And like we said on the other episode, especially then, I mean, my parents were born in the 50s. Nobody was talking about anything like this. Nobody was aware. Well, maybe some were, but certainly not my family.
Well, it has to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we learned in nursing school. There's different steps. There's safety. There's this, there's that. You have to have a lot of the building blocks
in order to even begin to think about that.
And when you're living in a state of survival, and this is what Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, when you're living in a state of survival, you are not open to accept or hear even what's going on inside of you, because you're so focused and so stressed out on dealing with what's going on in your outside world to survive. Yeah. So no one has, as our parents had all these kids, no one had time to really contemplate all of this.
Right.
So now as you get older, when you have more time to really sit back and reflect on your life, that's mostly when a lot of people start thinking about it. What was my life then? What is my life now? The one thing that I think would really help the collective conscious is to have this taught to children in school.
Ugh.
Because the parents right now.
Amen to that.
Yeah, parents are very busy just trying, two people working. And how do you have time to really teach someone this information? It needs to.
And you're exhausted and disconnected as a parent. I don't have children, but I see a lot of my friends. I mean, it's very, very difficult. Life is hard right now.
Yes.
And your point to the hierarchy of needs, which we should link in the show notes as well. It's really interesting for people to look at that. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like a psychology and sociology buff, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's difficult to transcend that.
And then
you have the generational trauma that lives within our DNA as well.
Exactly.
And the environmental trauma.
Exactly.
So it's like even further away from self-love. It's like, here's self-love, and you're like down here dealing with all of
yes.
Because that's real. I mean, and the way we look at DNA has changed. We were always told, can't do anything about it. Well, guess what? That is not true.
Yeah. You can change your DNA.
You can change your DNA. You're doing it. I'm doing it.
Yes. And if we can reach children, it becomes a seed in their consciousness, and then it just grows and grows and grows, which would make for a better environment and world for everyone as time goes.
Imagine what they would focus on and accomplish,
right?
That the previous generations didn't. And I have a lot of hope and expectations of the future generation. But I think I do agree with that. I do think more people are waking up to self-love and energy work and all of the things that, you and I have been talking about. So there is a lot of hope. But
lots of hope.
Again, with this shadow side, you have to dance with your shadow side in order to get to a place where you can even begin to feel love for yourself. Real love.
Yes.
Which is a feeling of peace and home and wholeness. And it's not easy.
I think the closest movie when I was growing up that came to this was The Wizard of Oz.
Oh.
Every time I watched The Wizard of Oz, I would cry.
Oh, yeah.
Because she would say, there's no place like home.
Yeah.
And she would say it was my home was always within myself. I mean, that was the whole purpose of that movie.
Yeah.
And, I'm telling you, thank God for The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I can feel. I am crying.
There's no place like home.
Yeah. It's so true. And especially in the last few years in the space between, where a lot of people have tried to find the perfect place to live, or they've tried to find that peace and serenity in a certain town or in a certain place with certain types of people. And a lot of folks shifted where they lived, right? That version of home. But the home that we're talking about is, again, just this unbelievable feeling of I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is the life that I chose. I firmly believe that, we come in and we choose the life that we have. And that I love every part of the physical, energetic, spiritual, mental side of me, the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yes, it's the space in between.
Yeah.
Yourself.
Absolutely.
All those factors, and learning to love each and every part of you that pops up. And when it pops up, you go, oh, okay.
Is this me?
All right. So school's in session. That's what we used to say. Okay, school's in session.
You know what's interesting that's coming up for me right now? And I love that this just hit me. When I was a little kid, and really probably into my teen years, definitely living at home then, I would look in the mirror and not recognize. Sometimes I would have that feeling of like, oh, I don't know who that person is. And as I got older and went on this journey, I realized that when you're a child and before you kind of remember, so 2, 3, 4, right? Mm-hmm. You're so much more connected to the outer realms and this concept of self-love and, what we're all striving to find. You're more connected. And then it's kind of like you wake up one day, I don't know if this is true, but it felt for me like you just kind of lose that and then you have to go find it again.
Yeah, they say that happens at age 7.
Okay.
The veil.
Perfect. So you would, so that makes sense. Because again, some of my earliest memories, I'm staring in the mirror going like, who the hell is this? And just not even having any sort of association with the person that I was seeing. And now I'm 43 and it's like, oh, I was so connected to my soul.
Yes.
I didn't understand the physical person.
You were seeing the energetics. Yes.
That, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting now. And I remember I used to think I was so weird and I wouldn't tell anybody. It was like my big secret, But I think having that from a child, and in my journey, I've thought back, it would be lovely to remember when you're 2 and 3, because I think that that's when the world is so new and, you have this understanding of the soul that we just lose. There you go, 7. I figured you would know. But that's something that's coming up for me because there's times in my life where if I'm not dropped into my heart and into the love that I have for myself, I sometimes don't recognize what I'm saying or what I'm doing. Like I can feel, and we talk about this in the energetics episode, you can feel kind of split from yourself depending on your circumstances when you allow yourself to jump out and you're just kind of like, oh boy, okay. What wave is coming next?
Yes, right.
And it's that polarity, right? And polarity, duality
yep.
is one of the 7 laws of the universe, right? So what that means for the listeners that aren't, and you can read a lot about this, in this 3rd dimensional construct, there are dualities. So hot and cold is a very simple one. There is no hot without cold.
Love and hate.
There is no hate without love, right? And obviously we could go on and on with the examples, but when you look at the world, and we talk about this on the other episode, when you look at the world that is so divided and so disconnected from each other and so hateful and so harmful and all of the words that you could think of, again, this is the way back.
Yes. Yes. To yourself.
Because when you find that love in yourself, you're not trying to harm other people. And that's when you can truly live your purpose.
Yes.
That's the path I'm hoping I'm on. Let's figure this out.
Yeah. The whole, it's like, when I hear self-love, when I was like, self-love, when these chronic patients that were with me with Dr. Joe Dispenza seminar, and they said it's learning to love yourself, I was like, and I have to tell listeners, I'm on this, just learning this path. I was like, what does that really mean? What does that really mean? Right. And it's not an egotistical love, I'm the best thing in the world. And no, it's not that. And so I went in and said, okay, what does it really mean to me? And for me, it means essence.
That's a beautiful word.
What is my essence? Because once I can really understand my essence, I think I could move closer to loving myself.
That's an amazing word. And I felt that when you said that. Because it is a feeling.
And it's a feeling, and it's a vibratory
Absolutely.
word.
And for me, it's a little different. I know that when I am in the state of self-love, I can radiate that out and literally change people's day. Yes. I've done it many times. If I'm down, and everyone will resonate with this, if you're having a day and the coffee pot breaks and this happens and that happens, you're just going to keep rolling through that, right? But if you start your day, I meditate in the morning, journaling, connecting to myself, when I'm not reacting to every single thing, the people that I meet, the things that happen, the serendipities that I'm present for, that I'm aware of, that's where it's at.
Yes. Universe feels the energy, gets attracted. It opens the gates, opens the doors for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not the goal, just so the listeners know. We're not supposed to be like flittering around in this like perfect self-love bubble. That's not.
Right.
That's another dimension that doesn't exist. And I'm sure we've been there and we'll be there again. But it is coming in and out of it, right? And I think a lot of the work that you've done post your accident and your path and all of the things that you've learned, how do you kind of go
weave through it?
Yeah. And you use the word tapestry, which is a word that really resonated with my heart. It is like weaving a tapestry of your life.
You're weaving your life. Yeah.
I felt that. When you said tapestry, I was like, okay.
Yeah. So self-forgiveness, which I think I talked about in the last episode, I think that really is a very important aspect to look at, within yourself. And gratitude, the energy and love of gratitude, that really, when you're grateful, it's hard to be grateful for your life when you're in chronic pain. But I think the goal is to just be in that loving state no matter what's going on. So like, I'm in chronic pain and I'm like, okay, I just say to myself, okay, you need to love this pain. It's there. It's from, the past, but we're moving out of the past. We're going to move into the present moment. And even for anything, fear, anything, if you can look at, because it's all based on past patterns and memories in your cells. If you could just stop for a second, and this is where the awareness comes in, and say, is this happening to me right now?
Right.
No.
Right.
Okay. So then let's just send it some love. Or let's reframe it, or however way you can move yourself out of that past pattern so that you can start creating what you want for yourself. And
in the present moment.
Not
living 5 years in the future, which is where my brain loves to live.
So it's all about the now.
It is all about the now. That's beautiful.
And if you can just, I definitely had a moment yesterday. I reacted to something and
Me too.
and I was like, okay. Yeah. I said my piece to the person and then I stepped back and it's very easy to stay into the energy of anger.
Oh yeah.
It's very easy.
And frustration.
Oh yeah, all those.
Yep.
And but you know what? As you become more aware of yourself, I can feel the energy shifts. Like I'm like, oh my God, I feel so okay, I need to bring up this vibration and back to love, and the more you go into your heart, and that's probably one of the ways to also learn self-love.
Absolutely. Connecting to the heart.
Keep going in your heart.
Number one. Yep.
I think that's the pathway out. And I just realized this talking to you.
I couldn't agree more, because if you think about, again, the denser energies, right? Shame and guilt and frustration and anger and all of these things, those are okay, right?
Yeah,
We're not saying they're bad.
No.
They're part of this
Being human.
where we live, right? In this planet and Earth right now. But in order to be able to feel, right? And I think where my path really shifted for me is I'm still in therapy. I've been a big fan of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I shout out to my therapist. She's amazing. But I was so in my head. Mm-hmm. And once I dropped into my heart and I dropped into my body, it took years, but now I will feel it before I think it.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened to you yesterday. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yes.
You were like, oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you know, it's kind of like, I don't know, I think of life like a video game. It's like leveling up. It's like, oh, okay, well, the brain now follows the body because we're so conditioned to react here
and not feel.
And let this drive the bus, right? Because then once you can kind of regulate, because it is a dysregulation. We're completely in our head. Once you can regulate that, then you can really begin a different level of work. Because to your point, it's in the cells, it's in the DNA. How do we then begin to change everything that our body, another good book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Amazing. It's amazing. And he talks about that mind-body connection and trauma and all of that. That's a big one. And we'll put that in the show notes as well. Yes. But yeah, I mean, that was stated so well.
And I think and feel, and that's the other thing, if to really manifest what it is that you would like to see and experience for creating your life, the intent has to match the heart.
Yep.
You can have all the intent in the world, but if you want to be abundant, for example, I'm abundant, saying I'm abundant. But if you don't feel that you are, you're never going to see that.
That's the work.
That's the work.
You can say whatever you want.
But you have to feel it.
You have to feel it. And that's when Dr. Joe's method talks about the heart-brain coherence and how it has to work in tandem and in concert together. And for anyone that's thinking about doing this work, it takes time. Dancing with the shadow.
Yes.
Really digging, and then being able to let go. Once you can let go, you're in your body, and that's when the work really begins, because it is all about the heart is the window to the soul. Mm-hmm. That's the portal.
And how is it when you leave this life? How do you want to be remembered? Yeah. How do you want to go into your next life? I mean, according to the Indian, they think about death, immediately.
Right. Oh, that's very true. Yeah, it's a very different way of viewing that piece of life.
Excuse me. And they create their life, preparing for their death.
Yeah.
We are so opposite.
Yeah.
In America.
Death is revered. Yeah. And something to be celebrated. Which is amazing.
So if you when you're in around people that are in this work, there's a community, there's a camaraderie, there's people that you could talk to about this.
Once you start on the path, people will appear.
Yes. Yes.
And people will come back together again.
Yes.
Right?
The circle
That's how it goes. And again, with the goal. Because if I can love myself, I can have real love for you.
Yeah. True, honest love. Yeah.
Real. True.
Unconditional.
Yep.
I call it unconditional love. To just love someone and you want nothing in return.
Yeah.
That's truly. And so if you,
for that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, can I love myself unconditionally? And that's very interesting that if you can love someone unconditionally, I'm having a moment here with you. How is it that you turn that inward and say, yes, I can unconditionally love myself.
Yeah.
So there you go with the dark side.
Right. All of it.
All of it.
You don't get to pick.
It's an unconditional love.
It's not like a meal. It's not like a menu where you can be like, okay, I'm going to love because I think that's, and again, coming back to the space between, historically, it's like I'm okay with loving these parts of myself, and I'm
Right.
going to ignore my shadow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a lot of people operate that way. In a lot of ways, we're taught in the collective to operate that way. Now, in the space between what we've gone through the last couple years, we're like, we can't look outside ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know it has to start with us, and we were literally forced in timeout.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care where you lived in the world, on the planet, you were forced in timeout. You had to stare at the shadow parts of yourself in fear, in stress.
Mm-hmm.
People were very stressed. There was a lot going on. And if you can continue, you of being anyone that's listening, can continue to look at that shadow side, you will find self-love on the other side of that.
Yeah. It's unconditional love for yourself. Yeah.
Yep.
The shadows
of all
and
parts. Yeah. So what do you hope for the future with self-love? Because a lot of people are waking up to this now. What are your hopes?
That's a very good question. I'm going to ask you that question, and maybe something that you say will resonate for me and bounce off, because I don't know.
Yeah. I think, again, with the astrology and the way things are moving towards this collective love, we've been so disconnected. We've been pitted against one another. You know, you don't agree with me. I hate you. I don't want to talk to you. I can't have a conversation with you. Or, you know, we don't want to look at the things in our lives that are difficult. We've been so closed off. My hope is that as more people wake up to the true love of the true self, that's when we can begin to solve some of the problems that we have on this planet, because we will be joined.
Mm-hmm.
Not because we agree with everything that the other person thinks. It's because we are now in a space where we can be present and be collective together in order to really solve some of the things we need to solve on this planet. Starts with that. That's my hope. Because otherwise, I don't know how else we get there. I really don't.
And that helped. Thank you. So for me, life is precious.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every breath is precious. Every human being is precious. Insect, everything in the world is precious. And if you can hold that state of reverence, I'm going to call it reverence because it is, then we would be able to, as a community, care and love each other.
Yeah.
And the world is not in that space right now. We're in total destruction, which is very sad. And let me tell you, the more you do this work too, and you start going inner love, when you hear such destruction, it hurts your heart.
Yeah. You can feel it.
You can feel it.
It's different.
It's different than thinking, because thinking you don't feel it when you think.
Yeah. It's not panic or, oh my God, what's going to happen? It's just pure, you feel crumble, like you feel it.
Yeah, you feel it. And as human beings, how can we do this to each other?
Yeah.
Or
to other animals and things on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how we come together.
Yeah, that's my hope, that we, I looked up self-love also before I came here. And actually I looked at the Christian form of it. I said I'm not, usually I talk more scientifically, but this time I looked at the Christian because I thought, life is mysticism, and there were certain people in centuries that have really been able to stand and walk in the energy of love. Yeah. Buddha,
Christ consciousness.
Yep, the Christ consciousness. Sai Baba. Mm-hmm. There's so many people, and when you look at how they attained that level of love, Christ says, love your neighbor as thyself. So it's not about loving your neighbor first. It's about loving yourself first. Therefore,
As thyself.
Then you can love
Yeah.
someone else. And I just hope the world gets back to that, and we don't keep having all these wars and destruction and just loving ourselves and our planet. That's my hope.
That's beautiful.
That's my hope.
That's the way out. That's the way out. I think that's the only way out. It's an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful place to end. I want to thank you for coming here and sharing your story and sharing your perspective and your view of the world. And, to all the listeners, hopefully you guys got something out of this beautiful conversation of self-love. And the intention of this podcast is to have another person connect back to themselves, which is ultimately what self-love is. And
sharing love.
And being able to have a conversation about this. It's not easy to talk about these things. These are not easy topics. But again, the hope is this will spark a conversation with yourself or the next step in your path.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Christina. I appreciate it.
Yep.
From my heart to yours.
Yep. Love you.
Love you too. And to everyone that's listening, thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy today. And we'll see you again soon in the space between. Thank you so much for joining us in the space between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in the space between.